believe in the strengths and qualities that everyone around you already sees. You bring a unique set of skills to the table, and you've earned every right to be where you are. Trust in that. You have to believe in yourself, and the world will believe you. To my fellow parents, I'd say let's be mindful of the biases that our children face. Let's raise them to be self-assured, regardless of limitations that society might consciously or unconsciously, impose. Confidence is cultivated at home. And finally, let's not forget that true empowerment goes, it's more than just gender. It's like intersectionality is real. And embracing diversity means recognizing and valuing different ethnic backgrounds and experiences. Looking at these holistic things that make us unique, whether it's gender, race, cultural background, ability, whatever it is. It's a beautiful thing. It adds so much value to our lives. It enriches our experiences. And hopefully, being cognizant of these things, we can shape a leadership landscape that's as diverse as the world we live in.
Prash Chandrasekhar, a role model in leadership with a rich background in financial consulting, global corporate experience, and innovative community building. He's worn many hats, from transforming a large banking system across continents to advocating for employees' voices at big corporates, all while running impactful initiatives like the Luxembourg Mind and more. Prash brings an insightful take on leadership in work-life balance and inclusion, especially around family dynamics and gender roles in the workplace. So this episode have powerful stories and practical strategies on fostering inclusion, elevating female leaders, and breaking unconscious biases. So please grab your favorite drink, settle in, and get ready for an inspiring and insightful episode that will challenge and empower you. So welcome to the Brilliantly Branded podcast. So welcome one more time to the Brilliantly Branded podcast. My guest today has a background in financial consulting, and now he is part of the corporate world. He is having a global background and many experiences from India to Europe. He had a pass to US, Middle East, and now he is in Luxembourg. He is actually providing a lot of unique perspective in leadership, and that's the reason why he is with me today. I will let him introduce himself and give us more details about his background, because he is a podcaster fellow, and I will love he tell us a little bit more about that, his podcast, and all his background. So welcome, Prash, to the Brilliantly Branded podcast. And the first thing is, could you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Maria. I'm a big fan of everything that you're doing here. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
For your audience, I'll introduce myself. I'm Prashant Chandrasekhar, but Prash is easier. I work for Amazon. I help them run consulting practice that helps small and medium businesses that are selling on Amazon find efficiencies, improve their bottom line, and things on those lines. I also am on the board of Amazon staff delegation, where we try to be the voice of employees and trying to advocate for them with leadership. Outside of Amazon, I help run the Luxembourg Mind, which is an organization that's dedicated to promoting Luxembourg as a hub for business, as a hub for talent. We do that in two ways: through the podcast that Maria was just alluding to, where we interview one decision maker, one local leader, and talk to them about their connection to Luxembourg, positioning them as a role model, as a source of inspiration for our viewers. We ask them questions about their connection to Luxembourg, how things are going in Luxembourg, things that we're doing well that we should do more of, things where we can improve. Outside of the podcast, we also do panel discussions twice a year, where again we get some of these decision makers and pair them up with top talent in Luxembourg, so that there's this clash of thoughts. We get this whole mental model definition, talking about aspects, elements that impact our lives here in Luxembourg. Outside of the Luxembourg Mind, I help run the alumni associations for INSEAD, the business school, and CFA. And lastly, on the social side, I also help run the Board Games Fanatics of Luxembourg, which is a board game club. It's Luxembourg's largest board games club with almost 800 members. We meet every week for board games, and every quarter we organize tournaments. And all of this is right here in Luxembourg City.
Yeah, wow, that is impressive, because it's how you build a strong network around you. That is probably what is going to make a difference. And part of our topics today, it will be focuses in women leadership, because I as you will know, the Brilliantly Branded podcast is for women empowerment. And part of the things that inspire us is see how other genders are supporting us as well to succeed, to get more empowered. And part of the things that I'm curious to know about you, I mean, with all this background, is what have been the source of inspiration for you to make this shift in your career? Because I saw that you have been part of the financial sector and now part of the corporate, probably connected. But what was this shift that inspired you to do this change?
Yeah, yeah. For most of my career, I was in the consulting side of things, like you said, the banking, financial services side of things. Um, I focused on my specialization for the last few years was transformation of large banks, which meant that I had to go to these big cities where the banks were headquartered and work with them to get them through these transformational changes that impacted them throughout the world. Which sounds nice on paper, but it meant that I was traveling a lot, like almost all the time, 99% of the time, which is hard when you have kids. Yeah, so the travel sounds really, really nice, but when you're actually there doing it, you're traveling 9900% of the time. It's really, really hard, especially when you have a family, when you have kids. Towards the end of the pandemic, as the pandemic was easing up, my consulting firm said, let's get you back on the road, let's get you back traveling. I said, I can't do this anymore. So I started looking for options here in Luxembourg, and that's when Amazon happened. About the leadership impact of that, right? So as I transitioned into more of a family life, it made me more cognizant about the challenges facing parents at work. And so in my role as part of the staff delegation, we are working on employees transitioning back to work after a break. It's something that Amazon does quite well already, but I think there's always room to be better, especially when ensuring that people transitioning after a longer break, like maternity leave, mothers transitioning back. I think there's always room for improvement there. The other thing is also promoting men's parenting, making sure men face no stigma and take parental leave, making sure they know what their rights is. It's not just something that a woman has to do. It has to be equal in terms of parenting contributions. Um, this overall principle also extends into my associations. At INSEAD, we've been organizing an Easter event every year for families. At the CFA, we organized our first family day this summer, which was really, really nice. Through these events, we managed to tap into segments of our membership that we don't always see.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have families that have young kids. It becomes harder for them to participate in evening soirees. But then when you organize a little more, you think about it from the lens of inclusivity, and you start organizing events that cater to a different segment, more people are able to participate. More diverse ideas, more backgrounds are tapped into.
Yeah. What I am perceiving here for what you are saying is basically your leadership style that is very focuses in seeing and see how families behave and how you can support them across the different initiatives that you are part of, but especially in the role that you are developing right now. What are, based on your experience, those things or the key things or factors that you are using to really promote the support of the women, for example?
Yeah, I've been very lucky. Throughout my career, most of my managers have actually been women, except for one or two. And I've received a lot of support. I've received a lot of guidance and resilience from watching them in action. It's shaped my own approach to leadership. One example is my current manager, Heather, who manages like an endless array of projects, tasks, and yet she always prioritizes her team. Every time I've approached her with an issue, she's always made it her own and worked with me to find a solution. Her ability to balance her responsibilities by supporting her team is something that's very admirable, and hopefully something that I can emulate. Another key influence was my manager in my days in Kuwait. Her name is Amira Abdul Rahman. She joined the company during a very particularly turbulent time. The regulatory landscape for asset managers, we were working for an asset management firm. This was changing. The firm itself was going through a lot of changes. Despite these challenges, Amira led with a lot of grace and a lot of clarity, breaking down these complex problems into manageable silos and then solving them step by step. Her approach was very methodical, and her approach to leadership, even in the face of adversity, taught me the importance of staying calm and focused under pressure. these kind of empirical experiences that you can only learn them by watching these admirable people in action. They help you hone your own perspective of leadership. For me, I recognize that while I've seen all these success stories, I also recognize that not every woman has the same opportunities. As an Indian myself, I'm very aware of intersectionality of race, gender, and other societal biases, and that leads me to my. I don't want to say conclusion, but that leads me toward understanding better that supporting and advancing women in the workplace isn't just about mentorship or leadership. It's about understanding the diverse challenges that women from different backgrounds face, and I hope that we're able to be more aware of these nuances and factor them into our decisions. And in doing so, we would create a truly inclusive environment.
I love that, especially when you say that we can really do something together and be aware about what is happening and how to solve that. But you consider as well that this could be the main obstacle for women to really succeed.
Um, I don't know if that's the main obstacle. See, I have a couple of anecdotes to share about obstacles in general that I think women might have in front of them. I'll start actually by talking about my two greatest projects. Yeah, my kids. Leah, my daughter Leah, who's 7, she'll be 8 in November, and my son Aaron. Um, it's a very personal example. So we do a lot of math together, like from a young age, and they really enjoy it. Yeah, it's something that I believe everyone should instill into their kids early on. But the case in point here is that my daughter Leah, she's very good at math. Yeah, like she keeps solving these problems in her in her head. While my son Aaron, who's also pretty good, but he's 2 years younger, a year and a half younger, and um, Leah's a couple of steps ahead of him. But Aaron is brimming with confidence. He loudly declares answers. He has no problem saying, "Oh, I'm very good at math." And Leah's a little more circumspect. She's a little more. She'll think about things. She'll reflect about things. And this, it opened my eyes into how unconscious biases set in. It's not always about talent, right? Sometimes it's about this perception of confidence, and it raises questions. Like for me, like I start thinking, looking at them, I start thinking, like, are we as a society, are we programmed with these biases? I mean, I know that societal biases exist, but it shocks me when I see how early they affect women. So, I look at this and what's the lesson I take away from this? Push back, challenge these stereotypes, these classic gender roles, every chance you get. Another example on this is the Board Games Club, right? BGFL, which is now, like I said, Luxembourg's largest club. A large part of the success and growth is attributed to one of our key players. Her name is Simona. We call her Moni. She's over the last couple of years, she's always been behind the scenes, making this magic happen, organizing tournaments, managing our social media, talking to people, you name it. But she's not one to shout out her accomplishments. She can be quiet, shy at times, hesitant to take credit. So, I made it my mission to kind of be her loudspeaker, constantly showcasing her impact. Today, she's our vice president and is on track to take over as president soon. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Again, what this makes me think about is that leadership doesn't come wrapped in loud, exuberant confidence. Sometimes it's about recognizing and elevating the quiet strengths of the people around us, because sometimes, you just have to recognize the efforts that people are putting in and be that source of support, that voice that advocates for them, that, be a megaphone if you have to, but ensure that these guys, these talented women get their spot in the sunlight.
Yeah, well, Prash, you brought two very important topics. One personal, talking about your daughter and how parents that are raising girls and boys, and at the same time, what they could be, what you will be advise them to really have this stop bias that we are probably having and doing unconsciously. So what would you be your advice for them to facing that moment in their lives?
Like facing biases in general, or while pursuing leadership positions?
Well, I think facing biases, because when we are raising kids, of course, having those difference and facing that and seeing how is different, the girl and the boy, how you will advise them to really facing that situation in the most wise way.
Yeah, when I think about my kids, it's raising kids, daughter and son. it's been a learning experience for myself. Especially when it comes to understanding leadership and gender roles.
Yeah.
I have another story here, like something that made me laugh a few years ago, but also reflect while realizing, my kids, they're bilingual, yeah, they're Hungarian and English, but uh, despite being bilingual, they still struggle sometimes with Indian names. Like sometimes, like a couple of years ago, their own last name. But it's a small moment, but it reminded me of complexities that they face growing up mixed race. It's great to be in an inclusive country like Luxembourg, but I'm also mindful of unique challenges that they might encounter. Coming back to your question about the obstacles, in raising both Leah and Aaron, I've noticed how societal expectations start shaping their own perception of themselves. Aaron tends to approach life with like this natural confidence, diving head first. I'll get in there and I'll see what happens. Uh, Sports, problem solving. Leah, on the other hand, she's equally talented and capable, but she sometimes holds back. She's a little more reflective before asserting herself. And it's made me more aware of the subtle ways in which gender roles are reinforced from an early age. For my part, I try to instill both of them with confidence, reminding them that they are more than capable, regardless of what society or the world might expect based on gender or ethnicity.
Yeah.
Clear that society as a whole needs to evolve. Recognize having this environment, this nurturing environment where all children, boys, girls, feel empowered and unafraid to take up space. We need to push for a more inclusive society where everyone has the opportunity to lead, regardless of gender, race, background.
Yeah, I love your words, and it's true. I mean, actually, what I have been seeing during the podcast and bringing all my guests is most of them are agreeing that in that point, to become a leader and to get this leadership very well shaped, you just need to treat everybody equal and don't think and don't be biased related with that. But sometimes things are just coming like words, and really in practice is very difficult when you arrive to your environment, workplace or business environment. How to really put that in practice, how inspire others to really make them act as you are doing, because you become a role model. So people are really putting you as the role model that you want to follow. But now in the environments where you are a leadership, how you can really embrace that and show to others around how they should be behaving.
Yeah, I think you're right in that. When it comes to leadership roles, um, there might be a gap there. Again, a couple of examples to share with you here. A few years ago, I had the privilege of meeting Indra Nui. I don't know if you know her. She's the former CEO of PepsiCo and on the Amazon Global Board. She was
Okay.
asked a question, about women and challenges that women encounter in leadership positions, and she pointed out that in the Western world, the issue isn't necessarily at the top; it's in the funnel, if you would. She pointed out that like it after graduation, at a younger age, men and women enter the workforce. Things are relatively okay at that point, but many women, they progress through their careers and they seemingly fall off in the late 20s, early 30s because of life events. And when they try to re-enter, they're met with a lack of support or opportunities to ramp back up. And I guess this is societal failure, right? Like we need to create the infrastructure that supports its career progression, whether it's through parental leave policies or flexible work options, mentorship programs that help women reintegrate. And I say specifically the Western world because these challenges are even more profound in countries like India, where female participation in the workforce is not yet at equitable levels. I think there the issue starts even before women reach this funnel. While there have been positive changes, I think a larger shift in mentality is needed there. Progress is happening, but I wish it was faster. Um, the second obstacle I'll highlight is the importance of us being assertive, specifically overcoming the fear of being disliked for speaking up. And while preparing for your podcast, I was listening to what Astrid Mayhofer said. She's an expert in negotiations and things of those lines. And some of the things that I've learned from her, women often hesitate to negotiate for what they deserve. Studies show that women are less likely than men to negotiate their salaries or advocate them for themselves at the workplace. And unfortunately, we live in a world where you don't always get your fair share unless you're like vocal. You go out there and you ask for it. So what's the lesson here? I guess empowering women to be assertive, confident, unafraid to negotiate is key to breaking down those barriers. And it's one of those areas where I think Astrid and people like her are making a difference.
Yeah, voice out. Not knowing your worth is one of the main things, because I personally consider that having that defined by yourself, that will allow you to really get your powers out and
Yeah.
go and negotiate assertively and asking for what you want. But it's true that sometimes we are afraid about to speak in front of a big audience, especially if they are just male. So in that moment, and I think that you have been surrounded by these kind of situations many times, what you will advise to that woman that is already in front of a big audience just full of men?
You know, a lot of times, I feel like we tend to look at ourselves a little critically. I would tell them, look at yourself from the lens of the people around you. They look at you with admiration. They recognize you for who you are. Look at yourself from the lens of the people around you, and you'll see yourself with a lot of love and a lot of kindness. You'll derive confidence from that. It's probably easier said than done, but when I look around myself, all these inspirational women around me, the way I look at them, I'm like, if you look at yourself the way I look at you, you will worship yourself.
I love that. I will love to have the opportunity to do that one day in a meeting with you. I don't know, probably this day will arrive. But sometimes, and I say it by my personal experience when I have been in front and I have been, using my super femininity powers in order to connect with the audience. Not, I mean, independently of gender, independently of what they are thinking about me, because what the people are thinking about you is another thing that probably can block us a lot, like, oh, well, if I say this or no, or if I am not adequate or appropriate in what I am saying. So this is a lot of these things are probably that is converted in limiting beliefs that we put ourselves.
Sure.
And I am talking here just by myself, it's part of what I perceive, what I see.
No, you're right. We do tend to be more critical of ourselves. Like, I remember like a few years ago, I was like, oh, I just shaved. Are my sideburns the same on both sides? I go asking my friends, and they're like, no one cares about you. Like, you're being very critical of yourself. Just, it's fine. And I think this manifests even more. There's this whole there's so much literature out there about how we perceive ourselves and how there are like these unrealistic standards that especially affect women. And this, if I could have this issue, I feel like it would be magnified for an industry that kind of sets these unrealistic beauty standards, and it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I know that because I have been part of the corporate world as well. And sometimes really feeling that I don't have the voice, even when, you don't need to start to speak loudly to make the people pay attention to you. So from your perspective, how you will advise a woman that is coming into the room that start to speak and actually the male voice are louder than the female voice, how you will advise this woman?
So I think there are two parts to it. One is, when you know that you have a strong message to say, and if you're being interrupted, don't back down. Just continue getting in there. Usually, what ends up happening is people recognize that you're trying to get in there. You're trying to add your point to the story, and a lot of times it stands out. And that brings me to the second point, which is people in an ideal world, people themselves will come and say, "Hey, she had a point to say," and bring you back into the loop. I think it's important for us as observers, as supporters, to recognize these moments where women tend to get interrupted and try to bring them back into the conversation. But equally, like, I think it's also important that we instill in each other the confidence that we deserve to be where we are, that our voice is important. And if you feel like your voice is not as loud as someone else, or if you feel like you're not being heard as much as someone else, don't be afraid to go and assert yourself. It's something that, again, as a society, we think we can improve in terms of instilling this confidence to go out there and do these things. And I see it. I see it in my kids, like my daughter. I feel like she's a little more restrained, and it's something that's programmed. I don't know if it's, yeah, I don't like, my perception is that it's societal programming that's happening at a very early stage, and it's worrying. And to me, that reflects a clear area of improvement that requires societal evolution.
Yeah, that's true. and very, very wise from your side, because I think that be aware about that is really what is starting to make the difference. Recognizing that.
Sure. Recognizing that there is a problem is the first step.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it is a very nice conversation that I had opportunity to have with you, Prash. I have to say thank you very much. And as well, my last question, just to wrap up, is if you would like to say something else to add value to this episode that have been already very valuable.
A disclaimer, firstly, that I have my own vested interests. Like I live with my daughter, my son, but also I have my mother, who lives between Luxembourg and India, and my sister. So I have a vested interest in ensuring that the women around me are empowered and that they have all the opportunities that guys have. But in terms of the final message, right, what I'd like to say is, to all the women, incredible women aspiring for leadership roles, I'd say believe in the strengths and qualities that everyone around you already sees. You bring a unique set of skills to the table, and you've earned every right to be where you are. Just trust in that. You have to believe in yourself, and the world will believe you. To my fellow parents, I'd say let's be mindful of the biases that our children face. Let's raise them to be self-assured, regardless of limitations that society might consciously or unconsciously, impose. Confidence is cultivated at home. And finally, let's not forget that true empowerment goes, it's more than just gender. It's like intersectionality is real. And embracing diversity means recognizing and valuing different ethnic backgrounds and experiences. Looking at these holistic things that make us unique, whether it's gender, race, culture, background, ability, whatever it is. It's a beautiful thing. It adds so much value to our lives. It enriches our experiences, and hopefully, being cognizant of these things, we can shape a leadership landscape that's as diverse as the world we live in.
Yeah, correct. And better generations will come. Thank you to that mindset. And thank you, Prash, because I think it's a lot of things to learn from you. And thank you for being in the Brilliantly Branded podcast.
Thank you for having me. Really, once again, I'm a big fan of what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prash, for your support. Thank you. I'm grateful by having you as a listener on this episode. I am in the mission of empowering thousands of women around the globe, and I need your support for that. Help me to spread the voice by sharing this episode and subscribe to our social media channels. And remember, if you want to listen to exceptional stories and have someone that inspires you, please get in touch with me, because I will love to have them as a guest to learn from their experience and share their story with you next time. So until the next episode, ciao, ciao.